Welcome to the Soar Podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs with limitless dreams and unconventional stories who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell. Get ready to soar. Welcome to the Soar Podcast. On today's episode, we have a very special guest that I'm super excited about. We have Virginie Ferguson. Virginie, tell our listeners what it is that you do and what you specialize in.
Yeah, so thank you, Ray, for having me on the Soar Podcast. So I'm what I call a resilience coach. So really what I do is I help others manage their stress and anxiety and build that mental and emotional resilience so they can just be the best version of themselves, go back to the best version of themselves that they were before they were kind of stuck in that wheel of stress and anxiety, and really just be ready and prepared for whatever life will throw at them.
Yeah. I think this is such an important topic. And one of the many reasons I'm so excited to have you on today is because stress is something that it's insidious, it's pervasive, and it seems to follow us no matter where we go, unless we deliberately choose to do something about it. So a lot of people get into entrepreneurship because they are so stressed out from their traditional jobs, or because they're dealing with something like, in my case, I went freelance because I couldn't hold a traditional job because I was dealing with PTSD. And that stress was just compounding by me trying to force myself into the mold of having a traditional job. And so stress was my prompt to be an entrepreneur. But then as the years went on, I found I was still stressed out because I'm trying to make ends meet. I'm trying to get new clients. I'm trying to grow the business. I'm trying to juggle all the hats. And so it's this thing that we're constantly trying to get away from, and making these big life pivots, like changing careers and running your own business. That's not always the solution, although it does give us more control over the factors that do stress us out. Do you notice this same pattern in the clients that you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, actually, just as you were saying that, just reminds me of my own story because
Yeah. Yeah. How did you
this
get
is,
started?
yeah, so this is, I really got started because, I mean, this whole thing stems from my own stress and anxiety. So before I did what I do now, I used to work in a big company and I was a project manager in the biopharmaceutical industry. So my clients were mostly vaccine producers all over Europe. So I was traveling a lot, and I had two children at home, two young children, and it was tough. It was tough just, trying to run your career and being in all these places and run a home and be there for your children. And the stress was mounting. I was constantly on the go. I didn't have time for myself. And then you end up like you're just snapping at your husband, you're shouting at your kids, and then all of a sudden you drop a bottle of milk and you're in tears because there's milk all over on the kitchen floor. So
Yeah.
it's through my own experience of trying to find ways to deal with that. And my first step in that direction was stepping onto a yoga mat.
Mm.
And before that, yoga wasn't something that I even remotely wanted to explore, because to me, it was just, I'm ashamed to say it now, but I thought it was more like a, gentle exercise for people who could be bothered exercising.
Yeah. I can see
And
that.
so there was no attraction for me. But I just thought, you know what, I need to give this a try. I don't even have time. I don't have the energy to go and exercise and go to the gym. So I'm just going to give this a go. And I must say, just initially, I tried, it was more like from the physical side of things. So I need to move my body. I need to do something to make me feel better. But then I just realized how much better it was making me feel all round, like mentally and emotionally. I was dealing with the stress better. What I was doing is I was getting up early in the morning before the kids woke up, before everybody woke up. So I had that time, that half hour to myself. It was quiet. Nobody was there. Nobody was asking for maman in the house. And so it's just practicing. And so because I was doing this early in the morning, I just realized that when I was getting to work, I was so much calmer and I had such clarity of mind. It was just not like, oh, like get the kids at the door and do this and do that and get to work and like, what am I supposed to do again? I was calm and I was clear and I was just like, why is that? And because I've got such a scientific mind and I'm always so curious to understand how everything works, I just started kind of diving into it and just kind of understanding what was happening in the nervous system and the breath and meditation and all that stuff. And so that just led me down a few rabbit holes. But then eventually I came to the point that I was just like, I don't do my job anymore because anyway, just the stress. And I was now craving that freedom that we often talk about in entrepreneurship. We want that freedom, we want that control, we want that control over what we do, how we do it. We want control of our successes, even control of our failures. We crave that freedom and that control. But also I was really, really pulled. I really wanted to share this with others. That's all I could think about towards the end of my old job. I was just like, I need to teach this. I need to share this with other people and help them in that way. So that was really, really a pull for me. It was just my own experience. And yeah, and sure, just the clients that work with, not many are self-employed, but I do have some who are self-employed or running their own business. But I think whether you run your own business or you're employed, it's just a fact of modern life that we are all stressed. The stress might take different forms, but like you said, it's always there because the nervous system was developed in a way that was totally suited to humans 200,000 of years ago.
Right.
But our life have evolved so quickly, but this nervous system just hasn't evolved with it. And so where back then the stress and the challenges were very seldom, now we're constantly bombarded by things that our nervous system perceives as threats. And so whether it is from entrepreneurship or, just we all live different lives, but we all feel that same stress and anxiety, that same response in the body.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I hate the most about stress is that it's really the underlying cause of all of these other health problems. I mean, in the US, we see obesity is a huge problem that causes high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiac problems. And whether it's from either stress causing unhealthy eating behaviors or stress causing a lack of mobility, meaning we're so busy in our jobs that we don't go to the gym, we don't take a walk, or, and in my case, I'll share a little bit of the personal side of my world. I'm dealing with very, very high cortisol levels. I had a blood test we're recording this in June of 2023. In April 2023, I had a blood test done and my cortisol levels were at 25, which from what my doctor taught me is very high. We're aiming for something below 10. And now I'm trying to do all these things to get those levels low. And I was like, why is my cortisol so high? I don't feel that stressed on a day-to-day basis. And he goes, because you've been like this your whole life. He goes, I only really see these numbers in people who've been stressed for, since childhood, which I mean, that makes sense given how I grew up. But the thing is, I've gotten so used to the high levels of stress that I almost don't know the difference. And so the high cortisol levels for me are now causing all of these health problems. And in all of these situations, whether it's chronic conditions or mental health like anxiety or hormone imbalances like what I'm dealing with, the underlying factor is all stress. And yet doctors don't address that. They don't say, okay, so what is causing you to be so stressed? And let's put some interventions in at that level. They say, here's some blood pressure medication. Here's some anti-anxiety pills. Here's some sleep medication.
Yeah. Like
so
plaster over plaster over plaster over plaster. And then we never wouldn't got there in the first place.
Exactly. So how do you help people when we've got all of these symptoms that are because of stress, and we're kind of distracted by, oh, the high blood pressure, the poor sleep, the weight gain, the bad eating habits? That's what we focus on. How do you get your clients to really understand what the underlying cause is and start to come to terms with their actual stress levels so they can deal with it?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, generally, when people start coming to me, they already have that awareness, like
Mm,
you have, you know where this is coming from, you know that these issues are due to your stress. And quite often as well, even their doctors might not even know, but they know in themselves, like
mm,
my IBS is always triggered when I'm anxious, things like that. So they know, they start to put two and two together. Um, but sometimes when I go in companies and organizations and I do workshops, for example, I do a great deal of awareness around that because, yeah, most people know what stress feels like, but they might not realize that, yeah, the rash on the skin is is caused by your stress because
mm,
you're kind of start to get into chronic autoimmune diseases because your inflammation level are through the roof and your body is not able to control that anymore because your cortisol is up, 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 and there's not enough acetylcholine, the opposite, to kind of calm it down. It could be, like you talked about blood pressure and diabetes, all these things, because again, the role of the cortisol is to go to your liver and just to break down those glycogen molecules back into this simpler sugar, the glucose, so it's readily available for your cells for energy because you're in fight or flight. You're
mm,
supposed to respond to that threatening situation. So your body needs energy. But constant glucose level in your bloodstream, we all know what that leads to, right? So some people don't realize that. And also just it kind of leads to all sorts of issues, just all sorts of diseases, because cortisol is what we call the catabolic hormone. So it's there to go and break down those molecules of glycogen. But that's not the only thing that it breaks down. It erodes our cardiovascular system. It erodes our telomeres, which are the little protective
mm,
cap at the end of the chromosome. So I often explain to people, it's like your shoelaces. If you imagine your DNA is your shoelaces, you've got a little plastic cap at the end. If that falls off, then your lace start to fray and it's not any good. The same thing happens with the DNA. And when the DNA is damaged, a cell no longer replicates. So it leads to diseases, it leads to premature aging and all these things. So we know that cardiovascular diseases are the biggest killer, number one killer. And the number one cause of cardiovascular disease is stress. And that we know. So yeah, it's just so sometimes I start with that. I start with that awareness when I go into companies. When I work with my clients, they already have that awareness. So the first step that we work on, that we do, is really work through their nervous system for them to recognize where they are. So like you say, you're like, because you've been in a situation of chronic stress and anxiety all your life, that has become your normal, that has become
mm,
your baseline. So this is also a first step that I take with my clients, is like being aware of where you are in your nervous system state. How does fight or flight look for you? How does freeze look for you? What are those manifestations in your mental domain, in your emotions, in your behavior physically? What does that look like? What does your safe and social look like? It's important to recognize when we are safe
mm,
and when we're triggered. So this is really the first step, because we can apply the same strategies, whether we are in fight or flight or whether we are in freeze, to help us bring ourselves back down into that safe and social space. So this is really where I start in my
mm.
program and in my course. This is really about building awareness. How does that look like in you? And then start to build those strategies. What can you do? What can you apply to take control of that nervous system so you keep yourself in that safe and social zone and don't get triggered so much and control that cortisol level?
So if the stress experience is where people are starting. You're trying to get them to a place of resilience. And once you build that awareness of, okay, this is what stress actually feels like. This is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm trying to reduce. How do you help people understand what resilience looks like? Because that word, I think some people look at the word resilience and they think it means, oh, I need to be tough. I need to, just hold myself up through no matter what happens. I need to be brave. I need to be courageous. I need to do the thing that I need to do despite how I feel. But that's not really what resilience means. So tell us what resilience means for you and for your clients.
Yeah. So the way I explain it usually to people is that like you say, that resilience word has been quite a buzzword as well for quite a while now. And it is that, mental toughness, I'm resilient, I'm tough, I'm big, and like you say, it's not that. The image I use often is like, it's like being a concrete wall. If you're a concrete wall and someone keeps firing bullet at you, yeah, you're going to stand fast, but eventually you will crumble. Whereas resilience is being more like Neo in the Matrix, where he gets the bullets and he's like slow motion dodging them, he's super flexible. And that's what it is. It's just being resilient is being flexible, is having the capacity and the flexibility to face a challenge and to bounce back from it, to get back to that state of pre-challenge, of pre-stress. And that's really what resilience is. And this is why in the program, after we've worked through that step where they recognize where they are, they learn to take control of it, we learn to protect that capacity. So we will look at what is draining you in your life. What can you eliminate? What can you put boundaries around? What replenishes you? Can you do more of that? Can you get more into flow state, for example, kind of to like really replenish you with all these feel-good molecules like dopamine, serotonin, anandamide, endorphins, all these good stuff that really replenishes you. And then I lead them more into kind of heart coherence technique because I'm a heart math coach as well. Just again, looking at emotions, using what I call that emotional compass to understand, what are the emotions that are coming up. Do I really need to spend time in those depleting emotions, or can I spend more time into these renewing ones and expressing more love, gratitude, care, compassion that really kind of boosts our oxytocin levels and help us feel kind of more attached and bounded to other people. And that also protects our whole cardiovascular system and heart because it counteracts the effect of cortisol as well. So it's a journey. It really is a journey, but it's a very, very holistic approach. So in my programming course, we'll really look at the human experience as a whole. Because I always say to people, we don't have a physical health or mental health, or we just have health.
Right.
This inner capacity, this inner energy we have serves into all of these pillars, the physical side, the mental side, the emotional side, and the spiritual side. And when I say the spiritual side, it's not really like, woo-woo stuff or like religion or anything, but it's more about your values and your beliefs, what really drives you, what drives who you really are, your core, So we take a very, very holistic approach because, like you say, you mentioned health, you mentioned sleep. These things, if we don't have them, they eat away at our capacity. And so there's not enough left then for mental challenges, for emotional challenges. So it's all about looking at it holistically, what we can do to protect that capacity and having that flexibility in there. And that flexibility comes from having that flexibility between those nervous system states, that flexibility and thinking differently and changing our mindset, and that flexibility of being able to choose what emotions we want to feel and not just be something that we experience, but make the choice. I am not going to let that anger, for example, fester. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to acknowledge it. Is it serving me right now? No, maybe not. Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe if it's something I need to address right now, but maybe not. Maybe it's something from before. Can I make that choice? and choose to feel care and ease and peace and calm instead.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of people, they either don't understand it or they don't even think that it's a possibility that they do have a choice. And I want to get more into this concept of heart coherence because this is absolutely fascinating. We are going to take a super short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into this, plus some action items beyond, I know stepping on the yoga mat was the right solution for you, but other people may have said, oh, I've already tried that. I need something else. So we're going to talk about some action steps that people can take. We will be right back. Hey, Ray Hyde Cornell here. Look, the freelance lifestyle can be lonely, but you don't have to go it alone. And if you're like me, you don't need another friggin' Facebook group on an ad-filled, icky vibe platform. You just need focused, helpful resources and answers at your fingertips. That's why I created the free Chiron community in Slack. Get access to freelance gig listings, daily motivational prompts, Q&A channels, plus a direct line to me. All inside the free Chiron community in Slack. You can download the app on your phone, tablet, laptop, or desktop and stay connected to the high vibe community that wants to see you soar. Get access at chironconsulting.us/Slack. We are back with Virginie Ferguson. So Virginie, tell me about this concept of heart coherence, because when I first heard this concept, it was in learning from Joe Dispenza. So I've read his books. I've been to a few of his advanced workshops. I've done his progressive and intensive workshops. And I feel like I've done a lot of work with Joe Dispenza, and yet I still don't fully understand what heart coherence is. So tell us, what is this and why is it so important?
So heart coherence, well, let's take it back to right at the beginning and thinking, we're talking about the nervous system again. So in our nervous system, there's really only two modes. There's an accelerator and there's a brake. So when we're triggered into fight or flight, for example, when we're stressed, we're pressing really, really hard on that accelerator. So you get that big rush of adrenaline and cortisol. But once the threat has passed, the nervous system is supposed to apply the brake and bring back that state of what we call homeostasis, so that balanced equilibrium. And your body does that all the time. This is the state that your body is always striving to achieve, whether it's your temperature, your blood pressure, all these things. It's all about balance. It's always about balancing the accelerator and the brake together. And we can influence that with the breath, because with each breath that we take, we press on the accelerator when we inhale, and when we exhale, we press on the brake. It's all to do with what we call baroreceptors, which are on the heart, that monitor blood pressure basically within the heart. So when we breathe, so if you know the mechanism of breath, we've got our lungs. And what drives the breath really is a muscle called the diaphragm muscle that sits just underneath the lungs. So when we breathe in, it contracts and it just comes down into lower into the abdomen cavity, and it just allows for the air to come in. So when that happens, there's more space for the heart because the diaphragm comes down, and before the lungs kind of fill it with air, there's more space for the heart. So there's a sudden loss of blood volume. So that gets detected, and in response, the heart starts to beat faster. So it basically applies the accelerator, so the heart beats faster. When we breathe out, the opposite happens. So all of a sudden, the heart gets squished in a little, and we need to slow things down. So every time we breathe, when we breathe in, we accelerate, and when we breathe out, we slow down. So this is how we can really take control of the part of the nervous system that we wouldn't normally control, because the breath has got that special place where it's part of the autopilot, as I call it, that part of the nervous system that's completely subconscious. Right now, you and I are breathing. We're not even thinking about it. We don't have to do it.
I'm thinking about it now that you mentioned it. I'm paying really close attention now.
But if we want to, we can take control of it. I can choose to alter that pattern. I can choose to hold my breath. I can take control of it. And this is why the breath is so powerful, because it sits on both sides of the nervous system. With the side that you control, you can influence the side that you cannot control. So that aside, so that's one part. So a heart coherence is about finding that ultimate balance in the nervous system. So it starts with the breath, where you're balancing your inhale and your exhale, because then you've got your accelerator and your brake that are harmoniously cancelling each other out. So that's kind of the first part of the heart coherence. And what that does is it creates a lovely coherent pattern. If we are aware to look at our heart rate variability, we'll start to create lovely wave, because it raises as you accelerate, as the heart beats faster, and then it comes back down as the heart slows down. So it creates this lovely, what's called a coherent pattern, because it's really kind of harmonious. But what Ahmed has discovered is that emotions really impact the way the heart beats. So the heart sets its own beat. It's not driven by your brain. And the heart actually communicates at least 5 times more to the brain than the brain communicates to the heart. And the heart gets influenced by our emotions. So if we're in fight or flight emotional state, so if we feel fear, anger, frustration, all these types of emotions, your heart starts to beat in a very erratic pattern. It's all over the place. If you were to look at it, it's very jagged. But when we start to feel emotions like social emotions, emotions like gratitude, love, care, and compassion, the heart gets into the coherent pattern and even more. So if we are adding breath and positive emotion on that, you get this lovely coherent pattern. And when that happens, your entire body and mind goes into this coherent state, meaning you're no longer driven by your emotional brain like you are when you're in fight or flight. That balance between your rational brain, your emotional brain, and the primitive brain just goes back to how it's supposed to be. And the way the heart influences us is huge. Often people think of the heart as just being this pump that pumps blood all around the body. But in actual fact, so it influences your mind through that pathway through the vagus nerve. It feeds back its own beat, the way it's beating, feeds back to your brain to say everything is well. When you're coherent, everything is well. It also releases oxytocin, a dopamine. So it's a gland, it's a hormonal gland in itself, is able to release all these beautiful hormones that makes us feel connected, that makes us feel good about ourselves. It's got a huge electromagnetic activity, it's like 50 times stronger than that of the brain. And we can pick that up, like with today's instrument, you can pick up this activity 3 feet around one person. But as human beings, we're even more sensitive to that. This is where we pick up as somebody's vibe or somebody's mood, or we're like, oh, this person just entered the room, I don't really feel their vibe. That's what we pick up from. We pick up on the activities of their own heart.
Wow.
And yeah, and also, you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza. There was a study that we done last year. Big team of scientists work, and they came to one of his 1-week-long retreat, and they took blood samples of everyone who were going to take part in the retreat. And then they took blood samples again after the week. And what I've discovered that in their blood, in their plasma, they had a really, really high concentration of a protein that's called serpin A5. And serpin A5 is the subject of many, many, many different studies and research, because we know he has got a role in protecting the heart. It's got a role to play in fighting cancer, Alzheimer, Parkinson's. We know that it stops bacteria infection. We know that it stops viruses entering the cells. So yeah, heart coherence with all these things, when you think about this level of oxytocin that counterbalances cortisol, that protects the heart, serpin A5, the benefit of getting into that meditative state as well. We can't forget about that, because that helps releasing nitric oxide, which again, nitric oxide helps flushes out stress hormones. When you think about that, just practicing heart coherence, it's got such a huge like physical health benefit and mental and emotional, because it just makes us feel more aligned with everything, within ourselves, with the world around us.
Yeah. And I think people are so used to focusing on their brain. We're so used to focusing on the mind. That feels like something that is more within our control. Even apps like Headspace and Calm, they focus on your thoughts and calming down your racing mind. And they do incorporate the breath, but nobody's talking about the heart. And
No.
it's incredible how much more powerful the heart is than the brain, and yet we don't give it the credit that it's due.
No.
So, how can people go about starting to get into heart coherence? Like, what are some things that you recommend people do, even as baby steps to get started in this work?
Yeah. I guess, I mean, the AppMath website is absolutely fantastic to really give
What's the website? You
I'm
said Heart Math?
HeartMath,
Heart Math.
yeah, the
Okay.
HeartMath Institute website. I'm pretty sure they still have this kind of free little program or online course that you can sign up, and it just kind of teaches you a few of those techniques to start with. And then really just starting with the breath and focusing on the heart, just kind of connecting to it, feeling it, just even placing your hands on your chest and connecting and feeling your heart. And try to breathe into that coherent pattern. For most people, to achieve kind of that coherent state, we need to breathe in for 5 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds. There or thereabout, everybody's different. Some people will find it hard to go all the way to the 5. I'm probably 6 seconds and 6 seconds out, because I've got practice, and because of my yoga breathing practices before, that came easy to me, but everybody's different. So it's all about finding a rhythm that flows for us, and then just imagining the breath flowing in and out of the heart to keep that focus on it. And then we can start to add those emotions. And with that, we can use really anything we want, because the beauty about the brain and the nervous system is they don't know the difference between real, not real, past or present. So you can use a beautiful memory of somewhere you've been. You can start to think of someone you love, your pet, or even just somewhere totally made up, or somewhere that you wish you could be, imagining yourself on this beautiful
Your happy
beach on the
place.
Bahamas, whatever it might be. Just so you can get that activate that feeling, and just keep focusing on it as you keep breathing in and out. And that's just as simple as it is. It's just that. And then if you really want to get into it, there's also the Global Coherence app, which is really, really great, that I use with all my clients, because it helps you. It includes like basically heart math biofeedback technology. So using the camera on your phone, you don't even need to buy one of the heart math sensors. It uses the camera on your phone to detect your heartbeat, and it calculates your coherence score.
Wow.
So it allows you to start to make that connection. You're able to view in real time how you're affecting your nervous system and how it feels on the inside. And there are guides, like little meditations in there as well, that you can listen to, that guide you through that practice as well. So I think this is a great, great place to start.
We'll definitely put the link to all of those resources in the show notes. And biofeedback is something that I've always been fascinated by ever since I first learned about it a decade and a half ago. And biofeedback, it sounds like this fancy scientific thing, but really what it means is awareness. It's where you are using sensors and data to become aware of what's going on internally, because we focus so much on what's going on externally. And when you're aware of what's going on internally, and then you're also aware of how you're feeling, and you notice the changes, that when something changes inside, this feeling and this experience for me changes, that's when you can start to really make a difference. And my personal business mentor, Anjani Emrit, she always says that awareness is 80% of the work. Once you become aware of it, then everything else becomes so much easier. So even just implementing these tools for the sheer awareness of it will help you get better.
Mhm.
And what are some of
Absolutely.
the changes that you've seen in your clients? Can you give us a few examples of where people have started when they first came to work with you and where they ended up after a certain period of time?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's amazing. It always gives me goosebumps. I often always end up like working. Most of my clients are mothers, and I probably think because you like attract like, right? You always end up working with people who were like you or are similar to you. So, and often when they come to me, they're just completely overwhelmed. It's just they're teary because they have no control over their emotions. They have become this person, a mother that they never wanted to be, so far removed from who they really are. And it's just that, they're stuck in survival mode. That's how we describe it. They're constantly in reaction mode. They react. They're not living their life. They're just surviving, just moment by moment. And then feeling shame and guilt for the things they said or done
Mm.
because they were not in control. Their emotions were running the show. So the first thing I always say to them is like, look, this is not you. This is
Mm.
not your personality. It's got nothing to do with it. In fact, it's been turned off. So it's all about your nervous system reacting to situations that I recognize as threat. And because it's similar to things that have happened to you in the past, and your nervous system's adapted to that, it runs in patterns. Your body and brain tries to conserve energy. So it's just it repeats. And so that's kind of where we start. And it's just like, right, I'm stuck in this survival mode. I'm stuck in the wheel. I can't get off of it. I don't know what to do. I don't have enough time to being completely in control. And that change can happen so fast as well. Like the first, like you say, awareness is 80% there. Is that. And then the other part is knowing that actually you can change and take control of that. Once we have these two things, we're like, oh my God, yes, I'm not a victim anymore. I don't need to be a victim of what's happening to me. I can control, I will say control the controllables, whatever happens will always happen, but what you can control is how you feel.
Yeah.
So this is where we start. And then on the other side, they're just back to being who they were and even better because they start to explore things that they had not even considered, that wasn't even on their radar. They'll just think, oh, I'm this good, I'm in a really good place now at home. I'm just loving my life again. I'm having a great time with my children. And their children respond to them as well in a completely different way. Their own behaviors change because mommy is happy.
Yeah.
And then they start to explore, oh, I've always been scared of public speaking, but there's this opportunity in work and I'm going to try that. And it just kind of expands, like grows arms and legs because it's
Yeah.
things that they've not even considered before because they were completely stuck in that reactive mode to now being like, I love my life. I'm in control. I'm happy. I'm calm. I can explore this. I can try to look at this and try that. And it's a whole thing around, again, like, I was saying earlier about, replenishing yourself and exploring new stuff. What else can get you into flow state, bring good stuff? So we start to explore and they're like, yeah, I might try that. Yeah, I've thought about doing this years ago, but, it was back there. And they're like, now I'm going to try that. And then it's just opening up their world again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how much we think right now. I think I'm okay. I'm functioning. I'm getting by. I'm able to do my work and talk to my friends and family. But then once we're out of that stress state, it's like, how did I ever think it was okay to live in that little itty bitty box that I was in? So thank you so much, Virginie. This has been super eye-opening, super educational, and I really hope that our listeners go explore some of those resources that we mentioned. And like I said, I'll put all of those links in the show notes. If people want to learn more about you and learn more about potentially working with you, where can they check you out?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Facebook, although just I don't hang on too much, don't hang a bit too much on Facebook, but I'm there. So you can find me on Clan Wellness. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So Virginie Ferguson, I'm there. Or you just can simply check out my website, resilienceformodernlife.com.
And you have a course as well. Tell me a little bit about your course.
Yes. So my coaching program that I've talked about, which is Calm and Resilient, also now exists as an online course that people can do at their own pace. So yeah, if you go to resilienceformodernlife.com/courses, you will find more information there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Virginie.
You're very welcome.
Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.